Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name is Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com, and Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. And you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today my guest is Paul Glover. Now, Paul describes himself as a no BS workforce performance coach, assisting organisations, team leaders, and teams to reach their full potential and become high performing. He's also a recovering trial lawyer, an ex felon, an unabashed Starbucks addict, a Chicago Bears fanatic, the author of Workquake, a speaker on business and leadership topics, and a member of the Forbes Coaching Council. And we'll find a little bit more about Paul's recovering trial lawyer life and his ex-felon life. So we'll welcome Paul, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning.
Well, thank you so very much, Rose. It's a pleasure to be with you and have this opportunity to dialogue.
Dialogue. So tell me a little bit more about how you are a recovering trial lawyer. How did that come about?
I actually practiced labor and employment law in the city of Chicago in the federal court system for over 30 years. And I represented labor organizations and individuals throughout that career. And that career ended in 1995 when I was convicted of white collar crimes and went to prison.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I said. No, actually, that's not what I said, but you get the drift.
Yes.
So yes, I spent 5.5 years in a federal penitentiary and was released in 2001. And at that point, my legal career was over. I could not recover my law license because of the commission of the crimes. So I had to make some decisions about what I was going to do with my life. And actually, that decision-making process took place during the 5.5 years I was incarcerated. I tell people that I'm always telling the leaders that I coach, stop and take a breath. Well, I stopped and took 5.5-year breath. And it gave me plenty of time to do the self-examination that was required. I tell people I'm a very slow learner and I'm very stubborn, and I needed to learn a lesson, and I definitely did. So when I got out, I decided that I would take that experience and not only make it a positive experience for me, but to be able to make it a positive experience for others. So I actually took that self-examination and revelation and turned it into my coaching practice. So being an ex-felon, where I tell people I would not recommend it as a training course, but the reality is that it will teach you a lot about yourself.
I expect it will do.
Yeah.
It would be very hard to have a life of, as a lawyer, and then all of a sudden find yourself in prison where you're so restricted to do stuff.
Well, and yes, and let me tell you that the prison system does not like lawyers.
No.
They don't like lawyers who are prisoners. And so, yeah, my introduction to prison was based entirely on that precept. When I showed up, the warden had a private conversation with me and said, I know that you're a lawyer. Everyone did, by the way. And if, in fact, you cause any difficulty here, you will pay the price for that. So if I ever hear that you are helping another inmate with their case, if I hear you're making any trouble whatsoever about enforcing the rules, I will ship you to a higher security facility. And he said, that's after you spend 90 days in the hole. So that was my introduction. And by the way, I had a mantra when I went to prison, and it was never make your time harder or longer.
And no, so I wouldn't wish prison on anyone unless they do a really bad crime. But yeah.
Well, like I said, I was a white collar guy, and that was even worse. But regardless, I believe that you have choices in life about what you do with your self-inflicted injuries.
Yes, yeah, that's very true.
Oh yeah, most of us have. We inflict a lot of pain on ourselves, and often we try to find someone to blame that on. But when you actually have that root cause discussion, you realize that in fact it's a lot to do with who you are and how you act that dictates what happens to you in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell me a bit about your book, Workquake. What's that about?
Workquake is a series of stories that I collected during my coaching career early on, and decided that I would share those stories, each one of them with an outcome I called the bottom line. And they're all based on two things. They're based on personal well-being in the workplace, because even though we've recognized the need for personal well-being, we seldom take the time in the workplace to address it. So that is called, that section of the book is used to promote well-being at all levels. And the second is good managerial and leadership practices. So each one of the stories is a issue that was resolved by someone that I was coaching.
Okay, that's really interesting. Now, before we started, you were discussing about your business and how employers are not doing all the right things, and how you coach them to be better leaders, I guess. Do you want to go into that and how workforce performance can enhance a business?
Well, and so we start off with, I'm very basic in what I do. I don't believe that leadership or management is complicated unless we want to make it that way. And I always start off with a new person in my coaching program, letting them know that people do not want to be managed. They want to be led. Managing people is basically taking complete control away from them to do anything on their own or have any autonomy in performing the job. And that's robotic. Unfortunately, that is most of the style exhibited by managers in the workplace. There's a term for it, the theory X, which believes that people do not want to work and are not going to be innovative and have to basically be prodded and poked to perform. And hopefully that's dying off. I think that if anything came out of the pandemic, it was the realization that people don't have to be watched to perform their job. And perhaps that will carry into the workplace and become a part of the new work structure. But right now, that still is not it's still not in place. I believe that management and leadership is now in flux. And leaders and people in charge have some choices to make about what they want the next normal to look like. And in my coaching practice, we spend a lot of time talking about what it takes to put together a high performance work team. The team leader has got to be exactly that, and not a manager. They have to be a coach. They have to be a facilitator. They have to be a mentor, and they also have to be resourceful enough to get what the team needs to do the job. So this is a high caliber approach to developing a high performance work team. And the benefits of that to the employer is that the level of performance is easily 20 to 40% higher than a regular team. So if you can develop the relationship with the team members so that they feel that they are a part of the team and also a part of the decision-making process, they will be more engaged. And by the way, I'm a research geek, and Gallup does a tremendous amount of research about engagement. And in 2019, they were proud of the fact that our level of engagement in the American workforce was 35%. Oh my God. If you were to tell me that I would be successful at 35%, that's not going to happen. And yet we celebrate 35% as if it's a victory. I don't believe that that's acceptable. I believe that it is absolutely a indication of the lack of leadership at every level. So the coaching program that I'm in is all about retraining the managerial mind and turning it into a leadership mind and a coach. I think all good leaders coach. And if you are able to be a good coach, you're able to have the traits that are necessary to be an exceptional leader. That's it. I mean, by the way, I wish it was more complicated. I'd charge more. But it's not. It's very simple. You have to be willing to do some basic things. And let me, now that you've tripped my trigger, I'll give you a couple. First, I believe in the 3 A's. That's attraction,
Yep.
attention, and appreciation.
Yep.
Attraction has nothing to do with physical attraction. It has to do with the positivity energy that a leader has to be giving out to attract team members to them. So the attraction and positivity is required. And if you're not positive, don't expect anybody else to be. They won't. The second part of the 3 A's is the attention. People crave attention more than they crave anything else in the workplace.
Absolutely. I agree. Totally agree with that. Yep.
And it is the leader's responsibility to take the time. And here's where there's always the pushback. I don't have the time. I can't figure out what you're supposed to be doing if you're not engaging your workforce to be better at performing. But there's always that. And by the way, people feel awkward about that because men in particular think that paying attention to someone is not manly. That it shows. And by the way, paying attention requires you to be transparent. It requires you to listen, actively listen, and it also requires you to be vulnerable.
Oh, yes. And men are no good at that.
No, that we can't do that because that's not manly.
That's right.
Anyway, so that's our attention. And these are easy to talk about, but very hard to put into practice. The last one, of course, is we want to do appreciation. And I think it's extraordinary how seldom we say thank you to people. It's just miserable. We will say, if we're at a restaurant and someone passes us the salt, we say thank you. And yet in the workplace, after someone working 40 hours a week, we don't say thank you when they go home. What we say is, I'll see you next week. And for most people, that means an invitation back to hell. They're like, oh my God, you mean 2 days from now, I'm going to come back for some more of this? No. So very simple things that you do. At the end of that 5-day or 6-day or 7-day work week, how about you tell people how much you appreciate the effort they put out?
Yeah, I'm quite often guilty of not saying thank you to people. I appreciate very much what they do, and however, I don't use those 2 words, thank you. And, and so they've done their deed and we go away. And then I say, I didn't actually thank that person for making me feel better or doing a little task or whatever. And and thank you. It's not hard to say, and it absolutely costs nothing.
And isn't that interesting? We have organizations who will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars buying people trinkets and swag bags and ping pong tables and all of the stuff that they believe, the material stuff they believe matters the most. It doesn't.
No.
What does is exactly what you just said, saying thank you and meaning it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so simple. And that's why I pride myself on being successful. A part of my deal is once we set the goals to be achieved in the coaching process, I don't get paid unless you reach those goals. That puts enough of my skin in the game to make me care enough about you for you to be successful. Now, sometimes that means that I get harsh, and I believe it's necessary at some point when you've agreed to do something, but you don't do it. And since my money is now on the table too, I think I have a right to say, well, every time you don't do what you agreed to do, you are costing me. And you'd be surprised. People actually respond well to that, to a very direct approach. But and again, I wish I could. People want things to be magic. They're not magic. They're really more common sense than they are anything else. And we already know, just like in retrospect, when it would have been nice to say thank you to someone, but you didn't. You think about that later and probably say, well, I should have done that, or why didn't I do that? So the whole point of coaching is to highlight the things that need to be done and then to hold you accountable for doing them. Most of coaching is about setting reasonable goals and then accountability.
Yeah, we all have to be accountable for our actions, don't we? And a lot of people just don't acknowledge that. They just go about their business and do the management of their team or of their business, and they make these decisions and they don't make themselves accountable for their actions at all.
You're right, and I would suggest that there's a way to deal with it. My belief is, even though, by the way, I've never found a company that's willing to do it, is that the amount of engagement should be connected to compensation. So that if you have a 35% engagement rate, you should only get 35% of your compensation. I guarantee you there'd be a lot more thank yous from the management making sure that they received their compensation. But you're right, accountability is hard to come by, and it has to be required. Otherwise, engagement will not take place.
Yeah, I agree. And there's other things like, these great CEOs are getting millions of dollars of bonuses and pay, they're getting, $1 million a year or whatever. But, and bonuses are supposed to be linked to productivity, but it's not their productivity. It's that should be, their productivity should be the thing that's gauged, not the productivity of their team.
That's correct. And it's interesting because I don't get along well with accountants because, it's a skill set from my perspective, a very valuable skill set. The problem is that they forget that behind every number is a human being. Otherwise, that number does not get produced. It doesn't show up on the spreadsheet. Someone made it happen. And the reality is you need to recognize that effort in that person before the number starts to make sense. And yet we are so focused on the number, we forget where it came from. And the guy at the top that wants to take the credit doesn't deserve the credit. He deserves a portion of the credit. But curiously, ego is in huge demand in leadership.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just, some of these multinational companies that are just, their CEOs or whatever just get extraordinary amounts of money, billions of dollars, for off the labor of those that work for them, but they take the kudos for it. That so annoys me.
Well, and rightfully so. I think right now in the United States, the gap between a average frontline employee in the company and the CEO is 85 times. Now, I have no idea how anyone could adjust that gap, except for the fact that they're given that money by the board of directors. It does not make any sense, but it's still the way it is. Now that we're talking about aggravation, I find it extraordinarily aggravating that if a company is going into bankruptcy, often the executives will go in and ask for more money to stay so they can work the bankruptcy out. And my immediate response is, you were in charge of the company when it went bankrupt. It should be your job to fix it, not more money anyway. But that's the system.
Yeah, that's just the way it is, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
Well, but what we do is, and again, my contention is that we change things from inside the system, and as you change that lower level of leadership, that will get promoted. Hopefully, they take that with them. One of the problems with promotions are the farther away you get from the front line, the less you remember what it was like at the front line.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I that's another thing I totally agree with. Yeah, that is 100% true.
So
for the majority, I won't say for everyone, but for the majority of people, it's very true.
Well, and so again, back to my coaching program. My coaching program requires that executives, managers stay in touch with the front line. If they're not willing to do that, then I don't want them in the program because they don't care. You've got to care about people and they've got to see it. An amusing story just occurred last week. President of a company who has an operation, there's 3 shifts. So of course the 3rd shift starts at midnight. And we just started, I probably had 3 sessions with him. I said, so when do you go to the 3rd shift? And he looked at me like I'd said something ugly to him. And I said, oh, wait a minute, you don't go to the 3rd shift, do you? And he said, well, no, I have supervisors there. I said, so you don't know, they don't know you and you don't know them, right? He said, well, no. I said, well, do you think that's really right? That you want these people to perform for your company, but you're not? Well, I said, are they a separate company? You see the 1st shift and the 2nd shift. Now he was embarrassed. And he was like, all right, you're right. I'll go. I said, well, all right, let me tell you how it's going to go when you go. I said, you're going to show up. And by the way, you don't tell your supervisors you're coming. You just go. It's your company. Open the door, go in. Go to the cafeteria. Sit down at a table with employees. I said, now understand what's going to happen next. Someone's going to call the police because they don't know who you are and they think you're a trespasser. So I said, so be ready for that. And obviously, you then have to keep going. Once a month, you need to show up. You need to sit with your employees, have coffee with them. The 3rd time you're there, they're going to believe you're serious. And that's when you're going to find out how the 3rd shift actually operates. So he's in the process. I give him credit. But he says he doesn't like getting up at 11 o'clock.
No, I don't blame him.
Yeah, I was like, do you seriously think those people working there want to get up at 11 o'clock? No.
No, they don't either. So no.
Yeah.
Anyway, have you got any more books in the pipeline, Paul?
I actually am working on a book. The pandemic, if nothing else, gave me some time to do that. I'm hopeful to have the book out hopefully by September.
Perfect. What's it called?
I haven't come up with a title yet. I said Workquake 2, and my wife was like, very original. Come up with something else. So I don't know. I'm more than happy to have a contest, by the way.
Well, you post it somewhere and I'll have a look. Now, where can people find you, Paul?
Well, I can obviously be found at paulglovercoaching.com. That's my website. And also on LinkedIn at Paul Glover Coaching. And I have a YouTube channel because who doesn't? So it's YouTube Paul Glover Coaching. I'm very original.
Of course you are. You're a lawyer.
Of course. That's exactly right. Thank you for pointing that out. So.
It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today, Paul. Thank you so much for giving me your time. And I will go and stalk you on LinkedIn now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I would love to promote the session as well as your podcast. So if you're going to send me a link to that, I'll make sure that it goes out to everyone I know.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the links will come out in due course. And again, thank you so much. And you've been a real pleasure and I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much, Rose. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your audience.
Thanks, Paul.
Enjoy the good weather.
You too.